Rasengan Uzuhiko, one of the strongest and more complex ability we've seen in the Naruto universe. It doesn't just overpower the opponent, it also applies a status effect, which inflicts a severe case of vertigo, making it seem as if the world itself is spinning. This, along with the power of the ability, should be enough to destroy any opponent, but we've seen multiple cases where that didn't happen. The real question is why? Well, I believe Uzuhiko is a bit more complex than it appears to be. You see, this Rasengan was first revealed in Chapter 2 of Boruto 2 Blue Vortex and was used to defeat the above Jigen level threat known as Code. This application of the ability was somewhat different than what we saw with Hidari in Chapter 12. He was able to completely eviscerate most of Hidari's body, and the destructive capacity of the ability was on full display. Now compare this to when the ability was used in Chapter 2, it simply doesn't have the same impact. Code wasn't visibly damaged by the ability and it just seemed less impactful visually. Now of course, you guys might be saying, well kiddo, of course it didn't damage Code and seemed less powerful. Boruto wasn't trying to kill him. So this Uzuhiko was simply less powerful than the one used on Hidari, which is true. I don't disagree that this Rasengan was simply less powerful. My claim is that it's actually way less powerful than you guys think. See, this stems from the fact that later on in Chapter 12, Hidari was able to get a hold of Sarada using a clawgram. Boruto then threw one of his symbols at Hidari and teleported behind him, then landed a base Rasengan. Now this is important to note because the Rasengan wasn't dispelled, it didn't bounce off Hidari's body. It actually destroyed most of his right torso easily, which means that Boruto has the attack potency to do that much damage to a Shinju as powerful as Hidari using a base Rasengan. What this also means is that Boruto doesn't need Uzuhiko to defeat a Shinju. A stronger Rasengan like let's say the Giant Rasengan or the Ultra Big Ball Rasengan could do the job as well. Also, if Boruto simply added more chakra to expand his base Rasengan in this instance into a massive one, he could have easily one-tapped Hidari. So what does that mean for Uzuhiko? Well, it is implied in the story that the Shinjus scale above Code, which stems from Ada saying that they're out of his league. Now one could simply say that Ada is wrong about this and there's no way she could know this. But it could also be the case that the author is simply speaking through the character based on the fight they had with Boruto in Chapter 4. And this would make sense by the way since Code was later strangled by Ryu right after he was born. And though Code was in base at the time, it seems as if karma wouldn't have made a difference since he didn't use it. Even though he was struggling to escape, Ryu had to release him. Mind you, Ryu is the clone of Shinki, so the amp to this Shinju should be lower than Hidari, which is why Boruto was needed to defeat him. So Hidari should be stronger than Ryu, thus being stronger than Code. Yet Boruto was able to eradicate a part of his body, while Code took 0 physical damage from Uzuhiko. Why is that? How does that make any sense? Well, I believe this base Rasengan is actually stronger than Uzuhiko. Now I know you guys might be thinking I'm crazy, but hear me out for a second, okay? You see, people believe that Code is relative to Boruto because he wasn't damaged by Uzuhiko, and yes, these people do in fact know that Boruto wasn't trying to kill him because he was trying to extract info about the Ten Tails. So this wasn't a full power Uzuhiko, it's unquantifiably less powerful. Again, you can see this in how the ability is depicted in Chapter 2 as opposed to Chapter 12, which by the way, isn't even a full power Uzuhiko because Boruto didn't finish charging it. So why does anyone use Code tanking and Uzuhiko that wasn't meant to kill him as an upscale? Well, some people believe that Uzuhiko is by default stronger than any other Rasengan because it's Boruto's strongest ability, even if Boruto is holding back. Now this of course, at face value doesn't really make sense. A character can use their strongest ability or best ability at 1% power and it would still be weaker than another ability at 100% power. It's not the ability itself that has the power, it's the user, and the user decides how much power goes into it. So the Rasengan Uzuhiko that Boruto used against Code could simply be weaker than the base Rasengan used to significantly damage Hidari, which would explain why Code took no damages from Uzuhiko. He wasn't really meant to damage him in the first place. Boruto simply wanted to inflict the status effect of the ability so he could question him. This doesn't upscale Code beyond every non-Uzuhiko ability, nor does it upscale him to beyond Hidari or Boruto. If Boruto landed the same base Rasengan on Code with the intent to kill him, he would have done significant damage to him. A lot more than this Uzuhiko. Mind you, Hidari survived an attack from an almost full power Uzuhiko, but was still damaged by a base Rasengan. It has to be the case that Boruto can adjust the power output of Uzuhiko to where it isn't lethal, which can be below the power level of a base Rasengan that was actually meant to cause damage. That is why Boruto was so confident in his ability to kill Code. As he said in chapter 3, killing you is easy. Boruto doesn't need Uzuhiko to kill Code, nor any Shinju not named Jura, because of course, Jura tanked the base Rasengan as well, so you could argue that, okay, this wouldn't have worked on Jura. But in any case, it's all just on a use case basis. Now, when it comes to the Shinju, it's a tad bit different than with Code because the Shinju can survive their body being ripped apart. Code definitely wouldn't. So Boruto would have a much easier time killing Code with a base Rasengan than he would with a Shinju, which I believe is likely why he used it versus Hidari. We have to remember that Boruto has to be very careful with his chakra. If he runs out of chakra or gets too low, Momoshiki might emerge if he loses consciousness. So using massive Rasengans isn't really practical, since it would burn through his already small chakra reserves pretty quickly. And yes, I did say small reserves because based on the anime at least, Boruto doesn't have a lot of chakra, which is why I can't use the giant Rasengan outside of the Borushiki state, which seems to amplify his abilities. Though some might argue that Boruto now has massive reserves since he's able to spam FTG as seen in the fight versus Jura, which is certainly a possibility, but it's never actually stated that one needs massive reserves to use FTG. It could simply be a skill issue, so the more skilled you are at the ability, the less chakra it consumes. So the logic could make sense, and Boruto's usage of Uzuhiko, which gives him access to what he calls the planet's chakra, which by the way is just kinetic energy, it's not actual chakra, but whatever, it gives him access to this power is somewhat of a workaround he found to the issue he has with chakra and suppressing Momoshiki. Like, I truly believe that Boruto was 100% correct when he said killing Code is easy. I mean, if Code is feeling pain from this Uzuhiko that, by the way, didn't even damage his shirt, I can't imagine what a base Rasengan would do to him, much less a full power Uzuhiko. These characters aren't relative in the slightest, and this is just blatantly shown by the difference in how Boruto dealt with Hidari and fought Jura. He was actually swapping hands Dragon Ball Z style and even dodged multiple of his attacks outside of FTG, while Code got effortlessly bodied by Jura and choked out by Ryu, okay? Ryu. The difference in power is actually crazy. With that said, there are two ways to interpret what I just said. Some believe that Uzuhiko itself has two versions of the ability. So, one allows Boruto to use the full power of the planet in combination with the status effect, the vertigo, all that lovely stuff. And then there's a separate version of Uzuhiko where it's just the vertigo. So the one used on Code was simply a vertigo-induced Uzuhiko that doesn't have any attack potency whatsoever. And I disagree with that. Because for one, aside from the force that's obviously being used here with Boruto sending Code flying a short distance, but good enough distance to show that the ability has some punch to it, which I guess one could counter by saying that this isn't the force of Uzuhiko but more so Boruto's hand actually pushing him off, which is a good point to make. But you also have Code physically reacting to the ability, like he's shown screaming a little bit here and he's squinting his eyes. It shows that something is happening. And it's not just being punched, something more is happening here. But then we have the dialogue itself where Boruto just outright says that the damage will continue semi-permanently. So the damage, which implies that he is getting damaged to some degree. And if for any reason you believe that damage means something else in this context, Boruto then goes on to say semi because your life will run out before the planet stops spinning. And then also says, would you rather quietly await death or give me the 10 tails and live? So my interpretation of this is that the rotational energy that was implanted into his body is slowly destroying him from the inside. But some believe that this is just Boruto saying that Code will die of natural causes before the planet stops spinning, so he'll likely starve to death or of thirst or something, which I guess is possible. I just think that Uzuhiko is just one ability and it works one way. It's not a different ability that one has AP and one doesn't have AP. I think both possess attack potency. It's just that Boruto is able to determine how strong the ability is at any point in time, which by the way is the case for every ability in the universe. So this isn't anything special. But yeah, with that said, let me know your thoughts down below. Do you guys agree with anything I said? Did it sound, crazy or not? I don't know, let me know in the comment section. But yeah, if you guys liked it, drop a like, and if you're new, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.